Modern approaches to losing belly fat often miss something important about how the body actually responds to stress and pressure. You can limit yourself to just 2 bowls of rice a day. You can climb endless stone steps until your muscles ache. You can cut out meat and alcohol completely for a whole year. And yet, for many people, the soft area around the waist still refuses to change. In some cases, the more aggressively you push your body, the more it seems to hold on to that exact region. I didn't understand this from modern fitness culture. I came across it in a quiet mountain courtyard, learning from people who don't even use the word diet the way we do. We've been trained to think of belly fat as something to fight against, something to attack through starvation, extreme workouts, and strict control. But thousands of years ago, in ancient China, the physicians who followed the teachings of the Yellow Emperor saw it very differently. They weren't focused on battling the body, they focused on helping it relax. Their idea was that when the body feels safe, it no longer needs to store as much. Instead of using modern terms like cortisol, they described these states as rising inner heat, fear affecting the kidneys, or emotional worry tightening the liver's energy flow. What we now measure in blood tests, they interpreted through the body's rhythms and pulse. I didn't just read about this, I lived it. About 3 years ago, I was in Beijing working long hours, sleeping very little, relying on coffee to stay alert, and pushing myself through intense workouts to compensate for sitting all day. My face and arms became leaner, but my stomach stayed the same, round and firm, almost like my body was deliberately protecting that area. I tried everything modern methods suggested. Nothing really worked. Eventually, I stepped away and traveled to a small Taoist temple near Wang Mountain, not because I believed in miracles, but because I wanted to understand what I was missing. The teacher there was in his 70s. He woke before sunrise, ate simple meals, never trained like we do in gyms, and yet his body looked calm and balanced, especially around his midsection. When I asked him how that was possible, he laughed and said something like, "You try to burn down the house to get rid of the mice. We simply open the door and let the wind in." What he meant was simple. The body stores fat around the middle when it doesn't feel safe. When the mind is anxious, when the liver is tense, when the system feels startled, the body behaves as if it needs to prepare for a long, difficult period ahead. So it stores energy in the abdomen, the natural storehouse, just in case. Modern physiology explains something very similar. When stress remains high for long periods, the adrenal system keeps releasing cortisol. Cortisol signals the body to hold onto energy, especially around the organs in the abdominal area, where it can be accessed quickly if needed. This response made perfect sense in ancient survival conditions when stress meant hunger, danger, or unpredictable environments. But in today's world, stress often comes from notifications, deadlines, and constant mental overload. The body doesn't distinguish between a real threat and a digital one. It reacts the same way, keeping the storehouse stocked. The old Taoist teachers understood something crucial. You cannot force the body to release fat through punishment. You have to repeatedly signal safety until the nervous system finally believes it. So instead of extreme methods, they built small daily rituals designed to calm the system. I stayed there for a month and practiced a few of them. My sleep improved first, then my digestion became smoother, and gradually, without drastically changing my diet, the tightness around my waist began to soften. Not because I was burning more calories, but because my body stopped feeling like it needed to store everything. One of the practices was an evening herbal foot bath called Tangu. Each night, before the time they called the Hour of the Pig, roughly between 9 and 11 p.m., you would heat water until it was warm but still comfortable. Then you would add dried mugwort, a few slices of aged ginger, sometimes a pinch of salt. You would sit quietly, place your feet in the water, and do nothing else for about 15 minutes, roughly the time it takes an incense stick to burn. Ancient writings from the Tang dynasty describe how the feet are seen as the root of the body, and warming them helps draw excess heat downward from the head and chest. From a modern perspective, warm water on the feet helps widen blood vessels in the lower body, improving circulation and shifting blood flow away from the head. This naturally supports the parasympathetic nervous system, the state responsible for rest and recovery. When that system activates, stress hormones like cortisol begin to drop. As the old teacher explained to me, when the feet are warm, the heart does not rush at night. I practice this every evening using a simple wooden basin filled with hot water. Within just a week, I started falling asleep without overthinking or struggling. After about 3 weeks, I noticed something subtle but real. My stomach wasn't as bloated in the mornings anymore. It wasn't fat disappearing overnight. It was more like my body had stopped triggering that nightly stress response. If you don't have herbs, even plain hot water is enough. What matters most is the timing and the stillness. No phone, no TV, no distractions. Just warmth rising through your legs while your mind slowly releases the tension of the day. The second practice is what they called welcoming the sunrise, or Kai Chi. The ancient Yellow Emperor's teachings say yang energy is born at dawn, follow it and you thrive, resist it and you weaken. In real terms, this means stepping outside within the first hour after waking, facing east, letting the morning light reach your eyes, then walking slowly, just enough for about 100 calm breaths. I used to wake up and immediately reach for my phone in a dark room, but in the temple, mornings were completely different. We would walk quietly along stone paths surrounded by pine trees as the sun rose. No conversation, no urgency, just presence. That early sunlight sends a direct signal to the brain to produce serotonin and reset the internal body clock. When your circadian rhythm is aligned, cortisol naturally peaks in the morning like it should, then gradually drops at night like it should. But when this rhythm is disrupted, cortisol can remain elevated in the evening, and the body continues storing energy around the abdomen as if it's under constant pressure. Ancient physicians didn't need scientific equipment to observe this. They simply watched people's lifestyles. Those who woke with the sun tended to be leaner, calmer, and more balanced. Those who stayed up late and slept through the morning often appeared heavier and more restless. Modern research now confirms something similar. Gentle morning movement in natural light can lower stress hormones more effectively than intense workouts done in dark, exhausted conditions. The body doesn't respond well to punishment, it responds to rhythm. The third practice is called wandering among trees, or Yu Lin. Ancient texts describe it simply: when the heart is restless, return to the forest and borrow its silence. This is an exercise in the modern sense. There's no tracking steps or pushing intensity. You simply find a quiet place with trees, pine, bamboo, or anything living, and you walk without a goal. You breathe, you listen, you let your mind slow down. On Wang Mountain, there were old pine groves. Twice a week, I would sit there on a stone and just be still. The teacher would say that trees release a kind of natural energy that calms the wandering mind and settles internal restlessness. Today, science describes it in terms of phytoncides, negative ions, and measurable reductions in cortisol after spending time in green spaces. But the experience is essentially the same. The nervous system reads natural green environments as safe, and when safety is detected, it lowers its guard, and the stress response begins to fade. In the middle of a city, the same principle still applies. You just have to find the oldest park you can. Put your phone away, not in your hand, not on your screen, fully out of attention. Let your eyes settle on something alive, like leaves instead of glowing rectangles. The waistline doesn't soften because you targeted fat directly. It softens because the body finally stops bracing for impact all the time. The fourth practice is what they called embryonic breathing, or Tai Chi breathing, also known as Dantian breathing. In Taoist teaching, the body is said to have 3 energy centers, and the lowest one sits about 3 fingers below the navel. This is described as the storage place of true life energy. The method itself is extremely simple, and it has been practiced for centuries. You sit upright, tongue resting gently against the roof of the mouth, one hand placed over the lower abdomen. You inhale slowly through the nose for a count of 4, allowing the lower belly to expand naturally like a soft balloon. Then you exhale gently through the mouth for a count of 6, letting the abdomen draw back in. The key is not to lift the chest. The breath should sink downward, not rise upward. Ancient teachings describe this as calming the heart fire and strengthening the kidney energy. In modern terms, this closely matches what we understand as activating the vagus nerve, the main communication pathway that tells the brain the body is safe. When the vagus nerve is engaged, stress hormones like cortisol can drop quickly. I practice this twice a day, once at dawn after the morning walk, and again before the evening foot bath, about 5 minutes each time. The teacher I studied with used to do it for an hour every morning and called it his real work, not something secondary. At first, my thoughts were restless, but after a few days, the breathing became deeper without effort. That tight, anxious feeling under my ribs in the afternoon slowly started to disappear. And when that internal tightness fades, the body no longer feels the need to store protective fat around the organs. The fifth and most important foundation of all is sleep alignment with natural cycles, known in ancient terms as following the heavenly timing, or Ziliu. Traditional teachings divide the night into phases and say that the liver and gallbladder do their deepest restoration work between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. The body is meant to be in deep rest during this window so it can clean and reset internal systems. If you stay awake during this time, internal heat rises, and the body maintains its storage mode, especially around the abdomen. In the temple, everything followed this rhythm. Lights were out by 9:30 p.m. Everyone slept by 10, without exception. Waking happened at 5 a.m. every day, even on special occasions. At first, it felt strict, but after about 2 weeks, I realized it wasn't discipline in the usual sense. It was treatment. Modern research now shows that sleeping fewer than 6 hours can raise evening cortisol and reduce insulin sensitivity the next day, both of which are strongly linked to increased visceral fat storage. Ancient physicians didn't measure hormones, but they observed the same outcomes through patterns in the body, pulse, and overall vitality. They also valued a short midday rest, often between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. Even 15-20 minutes of lying down with closed eyes without necessarily falling into deep sleep was seen as essential recovery for the heart and system. In many traditional villages, this practice still exists. In modern cities, it's often dismissed as laziness, but biologically, the body still benefits from it. When I returned to Beijing, I kept this sleep rhythm unchanged. Same bedtime, same wake-up time. My waist didn't change because I started a new diet. It changed because my body stopped perceiving constant stress and uncertainty. All 5 of these practices work together in the way ancient physicians intended. The evening foot bath draws energy downward and signals the end of the day. The sunrise walk resets the internal clock and restores natural hormone rhythm. Time in the forest allows the nervous system to settle and release tension. Dantian breathing trains the vagus nerve to switch the body out of alert mode. And sleeping according to natural timing gives the internal organs the quiet they need for repair. None of these methods directly burn fat. Instead, they communicate one message to the body: safety. And a body that feels safe has no reason to store energy defensively around the middle. This is the core of the ancient approach. It's not about increasing effort, but restoring rhythm. Warm the system at night. Meet the morning light. Spend time among trees. Breathe into the lower abdomen. Sleep when the body is designed to sleep. Do these consistently, and the body begins to let go of what it was holding for protection. We often think modern life is more advanced, but these traditions were observing the same human body for centuries without machines, and they saw a pattern clearly. Stress gathers in the middle, and calm dissolves it. You cannot force a tight knot open by pulling harder, you loosen it first. So if you begin, don't try to do everything at once. Start with one practice. Tonight, warm water, a simple foot soak for 15 minutes, no distractions. Tomorrow morning, step outside before your phone and let natural light reach your eyes as you walk slowly. Notice what changes, not just in your waist, but in your chest, your breath, your internal state. The belly always follows the heart. It always has. Your body is not resisting you. It is responding to what it believes is necessary for survival. When you consistently show it that the danger has passed, it finally stops storing for protection and begins to release.